Hi, my name is Rebecca Carrillo and I am a program coordinator at the Doherty Water for Food Global Institute. I started in this role in August of 2025, and in my role I work to develop DWFI programs by analyzing agricultural water policy, advancing the types of policy and water conservation strategies. I also work with local stakeholders to help do all of this work. So my project involves studying and analyzing agricultural water policy in Georgia. I am doing this by looking at the climate, the institutional frameworks, the water law in Georgia, the hydrology, and a lot of other important aspects that shape agricultural water policy in Georgia. I conduct this work primarily through desk research as well as interviews with Georgia water experts. I work with several of the DWFI policy team members to direct my research and ultimately form a report that will be the output for this project. It's important to focus on Georgia specifically, and it's an important case study compared to other regions because although the Institute has partnerships and visibility in many US states and internationally, this research specifically will increase the Institute's visibility in the eastern and southeastern part of the US. I collaborate with the DWFI policy team as well as staff from the National Drought Mitigation Center. I've also worked with many people in Georgia, including university researchers, state government workers, and many people who work in the agricultural industry. This work is funded by a cooperative agreement between the USDA Office of the Chief Economist and the National Drought Mitigation Center. My favorite part of working on this project so far has to be when I traveled to Albany, Georgia to attend the Apalachicola Chattahoochee or Flint or ACF conference in Albany, Georgia. And this was a great opportunity for me to meet a lot of the water experts in person. And as part of the conference, we took a land-based heritage tour before the conference started, where we got to see a lot of important water sites and even tour some farms in person. So that was a really exciting part of my research, and it was a lot of fun. This project helps contribute to water and food security, both for Georgia and in other states and internationally, because it helps to understand how water for agriculture is managed in Georgia. And learning from how it's managed can be applied to other states. Drought conditions and changing weather variability in Georgia have caused producers in Georgia to change their crop rotation and their farming practices. So hopefully understanding the context of the current water policy in Georgia, as well as the overall context of what is influencing all of these changes, will help researchers, policymakers, decision makers, and ultimately producers make well-informed decisions in the future. These two pieces look at water market readiness and agricultural water policy in Georgia. It's important that we look at these two pieces together because they influence one another. Georgia has a thriving agricultural industry. However, a lot of its weather and climate patterns are changing. So in order to better understand that, we are looking at innovative approaches to water conservation in the state, which many of these approaches, or some of them, look like market-like mechanisms. Exploring emerging water management tools can help improve drought resilience and ultimately help producers make the best decision for their crops. One interesting and surprising thing that I learned during my research was the history of agriculture in Georgia. As part of my research project, I was summarizing how agriculture developed in the state, and it was really interesting to learn how politics, historical events, and even major weather events throughout Georgia's history shaped how agriculture changed in Georgia. So from crops from the indigenous peoples to the wide variety of crops produced today, it was really interesting to learn how that changed over time. Its hydrology is really unique. So the northern part of the state is mountainous and more rocky than the southern part. The state is essentially divided in half by what's called a fall line, which is a hydrology geography term. And in the southern part of the state, there is a major coastal plain, and that's the part that connects to the coast. So in the northern part of the state, because of that hydrology and geography, a lot of water users will use the surface water that's available. And in the southern part of the state, because of the hydrology, the producers will use the groundwater. So that was a really fascinating difference that I learned about Georgia. This project fits with DWFI's broader focus on changing irrigation and precipitation patterns in the U.S. because Georgia is undergoing these changes. Georgia is facing drought, and their agricultural water policy as a result may need to change to adapt to these changes. In western U.S., a lot of states in the West have already undergone severe drought, and as a result, their policy has changed to adapt to these changes. However, eastern states and southeastern states have not experienced these changes in precipitation before, and so understanding how they're adapting to these changes connects to the broader DWFI goal. This project has definitely shifted my personal and professional trajectory because I've learned so much about water. Before I joined DWFI, I was in grad school studying environmental science and environmental law, and I didn't know too much about the breadth of the water world. And now that I've joined DWFI and I've been conducting really in-depth research, I've learned so much about water in many different states internationally, and I'm really eager to continue this type of research, learn more about water law, water markets, agricultural water policies, and more. I hope that readers can take away a lot of information about this research on Georgia. I hope that they gain a better understanding of agricultural water policies in Georgia, as well as a better understanding of the hydrology, water law, state water management, and water market-like mechanisms happening in Georgia. I hope that I can reach a really broad audience with the outputs of this research project. I hope that the research is detailed enough so that researchers, policymakers, producers are able to gain a really good understanding of agricultural water policy in Georgia. But I also hope that it is broad enough for anyone to be able to pick it up and learn something new about Georgia agricultural water. A successful impact for this work, this research on Georgia, would hopefully be that I can contribute to the conversations happening surrounding water conservation and agricultural water policy and management, both in eastern and southeastern United States, as well as across the whole of the U.S.